The night sky above the small Australian town was clear and endless. The stars glimmered like frozen sparks scattered across a black ocean. In a quiet shed behind an old farmhouse, three friends sat around a dusty table covered with radio equipment. In blinking screens marked, the oldest of the three was adjusting a set of antennas they had built themselves from scrap metal and spare parts. He loved searching for strange radio waves from space. Most of the time they found nothing but static, or faint signals from satellites, but tonight something different came through. The speaker hissed, and then a strange sound like a pulse mixed with sharp clicks filled the air. All three froze, staring at the green lines dancing across the monitor. Sarah leaned closer to the speaker and frowned. It sounded almost like a voice buried under noise, but the words were impossible to understand. Then they heard it, a broken, deep voice speaking in a language none of them knew, yet somehow it carried an urgency that made their hearts race. The voice repeated a sequence of numbers, followed by a pause, and then the same phrase in another tone. Finally, a few words came out clear enough to understand. Millions will die. Mark sat back, his hands trembling. This was no ordinary signal. It was strong, powerful enough to push through layers of interference, but also strangely distorted, as if it had traveled far beyond normal limits. Jack, the youngest, quickly checked their equipment, thinking it could be interference from nearby aircraft or military tests, but nothing matched the strength or pattern of the signal. It wasn't from Earth. The message repeated over and over. Sometimes the tone shifted to what sounded like panic, and each time the strange clicks grew faster. Sarah scribbled down the numbers, trying to make sense of them. They looked like coordinates, but they didn't point to anywhere near Earth. It pointed to a star system far away, one they had never heard of before. This was not meant for them, and yet here it was, pounding in their ears as if screaming for help. The three friends argued for hours about what to do. Should they call the government? Should they ignore it and pretend it never happened? Mark thought about the last words, millions will die. The weight of them made him feel cold. They had spent years dreaming about finding proof of life beyond Earth, but now they felt more like trespassers in someone else's emergency. Jack finally said, "We have to answer. Even if it's crazy." Sarah stared at him, wide-eyed. "Answer with what? We don't even speak their language." Mark leaned forward and said, "Maybe they're smart enough to figure out ours." He began typing a short message using the simplest English he could manage. "We heard you. We will help." He connected the transmitter, a rough setup, powered by an old generator outside, and sent the signal out into the void. Their reply was instant, but not in the way they expected. The pulse in the original message slowed, then shifted into a different pattern. The clicks changed rhythm, as if the voice on the other end had heard them and was now listening. Sarah felt a shiver run through her spine. "We're talking to something out there," she whispered. Mark's face was pale. He didn't say it, but he was thinking the same thing. What if we just told someone we can help and now they expect us to? The night grew colder outside, but inside the shed the air felt heavy. The signal kept changing, as if waiting for them to speak again. Jack grinned nervously. "What if they send us an address or something?" Mark looked at the coordinates again. "This isn't an address," he said slowly. "This is a meeting point." Sarah leaned in. "We're a point just outside our solar system," Mark said softly. His voice was almost lost under the hum of the equipment. The realization hit them all at once. Whoever had sent this message believed they were sending it to someone already traveling among the stars. The idea that three ordinary people with no spaceship, no plan, and no training had just told an alien civilization they would come was absurd. Yet a strange feeling hung over them. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something heavier, like a chain of responsibility, that had just wrapped around them. Hours later, when the signal finally faded, they sat in silence. Each of them kept glancing at the old shed door, half expecting a knock from someone who had been listening outside. Instead, what came was a deep rumble. From above, a shadow crossed the stars overhead, so large it blotted out entire constellations. Mark, Sarah, and Jack ran outside. Their breath caught in their throats. Above them, hovering without a sound, was a ship nothing like the ones from human imagination. It was smooth, dark, and shaped like an arrowhead, with lights running along its edges. The lights pulsed in the same rhythm as the signal they had just heard. The ship began to descend slowly toward the open field behind the farmhouse. The three friends could only watch frozen as the ground vibrated under their feet. A crackling voice filled the air around them, not from any speaker, but as if it was inside their own heads. Your message was received. You are cleared for transfer. The words were calm but carried an unshakable authority. The friends glanced at each other in disbelief. Their night of stargazing had turned into the start of something none of them could have imagined, and deep inside they knew whatever they were about to face would change not only their lives, but maybe the fate of the galaxy. The night air was still trembling from the ship's descent as Mark, Sarah, and Jack stood frozen in the open field. The smooth black arrowhead hovered just meters above the grass, a faint shimmering haze forming around its edges as if it bent the light itself. The pulsing light slowed, matching the rhythm of a heartbeat. Friends could hear nothing but the low hum that seemed to vibrate in their bones. The air smelled faintly metallic like rain before a storm. A section of the ship's underside opened silently, revealing a ramp of liquid silver that hardened as it touched the ground. Mark swallowed hard, his mind still trying to process what was happening. Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. "Are we really doing this?" Jack didn't answer. He was already taking a step forward, as if pulled by some invisible force. The voice returned inside their heads. "This way, please." "You are expected." There was no question in the tone, only an order. The three exchanged one last look before walking toward the ramp. Every step felt heavier than the last. The moment they set foot inside the ship, the world outside faded away. The ramp melted behind them, sealing shut like water closing over a stone. The interior was dim, but alive with flowing patterns of light that ran along the walls and floor. The air was warmer here, but not uncomfortably so. The sound of the hum surrounded them like a constant reminder. They were inside something alive, or something close to it. Two tall figures stepped out from the shadows. They were not like anything the friends had seen in science fiction. Their bodies were long and elegant, covered in layered plates that shifted and shimmered with faint colors. They had no visible mouths, yet their eyes, large and silver, studied the humans with intense focus. One of them spoke directly into their minds. "We are Thalrin. You have answered our call." Sarah's lips moved, but no sound came out. She felt the weight of those silver eyes, like they could see every memory she had ever lived. The second Thalrin tilted its head slightly, as if scanning them. "You are not what we expected." Mark finally found his voice. "Expected what exactly?" The first alien's gaze did not waver. "A fleet capable of resisting the swarm." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "Swarm? What swarm?" The second alien moved closer. Each step was silent yet heavy. "You have accepted a mission of extreme danger without aid. The Thalrin homeworld will be consumed within your measured time of 32 rotations of your planet." The humans stared at each other, silently trying to understand. The swarm, as the aliens explained, was not a creature, but a sea of machines. Billions of self-replicating nanobots spreading across the planet, eating everything: metal, stone, even air components, turning them into more of themselves. The galaxy's strongest fleets had failed against it. The Thalrin had sent a call for help to their most powerful allies, but somehow, due to a mistake in the coordinates, it had reached Earth. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. "We're just people, not soldiers, not explorers. You've got the wrong number." The first alien leaned closer. Its eyes seemed brighter as it studied his face. "And yet you came." The words carried no judgment, only fact. Sarah looked down. Her voice was barely a breath. "We said we'd help because we thought, I don't know. Someone else would do the real work." Mark glanced around the ship. "This thing's not taking us back, is it?" The second alien turned away. "A course has been set. Arrival in 36 of your hours. You will be briefed in full before deployment." "Deployment," Jack said sharply. "We didn't agree to it." The ship lurched suddenly, as if something massive had just passed close by. The walls rippled with red light. The aliens spoke quickly to each other in a language the humans couldn't follow. Sarah grabbed the edge of a glowing panel. "What was that?" The first alien looked at them calmly. "Patrol scouts from the swarm. They know we are coming." The lights dimmed again, but the tension in the air only grew. As the ship sped toward the unknown, the three friends realized there was no turning back. Whatever waited for them on the Thalrin homeworld was not just a rescue mission. It was survival against something that even the galaxy feared. The Thalrin ship moved through the darkness of space. Like a shadow sliding between stars, the three humans sat in a small chamber. Surrounded by panels of shifting light that responded to the alien's touch mark, Sarah and Jack listened as the first Thalran commander stood before them explaining what they were facing. The swarm was older than the Thalran themselves. It had no leaders, no central brain, only a vast hive of tiny machines, each one no bigger than a grain of sand. But, together forming waves that devoured entire cities in hours, the swarm learned quickly, adapting to every weapon the galaxy had thrown at it. The Thalran fleets used shields, energy cannons, even starship-sized flamethrowers, but nothing worked. For long, the swarm always evolved. The commander's voice was calm, but the meaning behind the words was heavy. The last planet they attacked was reduced to dust in less than 5 days. Mark tried to picture that, but couldn't. Sarah frowned. So, what do you expect us to do? We don't even have weapons. The second Thalran stepped forward. A tall figure with sharper armor plates and glowing patterns along its arms. Your technology may be crude, but that is why you may succeed the humans. Exchanged confused looks. Crude, Jack said. Offended, the alien explained that the swarm was designed to target advanced and predictable systems. It could hack into sophisticated electronics. Faster than any known species could defend, but primitive. Low-tech, unpredictable systems confused it. The Thalran had studied the humans. Ship and equipment, which still used analog switches, old copper wiring, and radio waves full of random noise. It was messy, chaotic, and in the swarm's logic it made no sense to attack. Mark leaned forward. Wait, are you saying our junk might be invisible to it? The alien nodded. Not invisible, but less appealing. The swarm prioritizes targets that can be consumed and replicated efficiently. Your systems are inefficient and unstable. Sarah almost laughed. So our broken gear is an advantage. Jack shook his head. That's insane. The commander placed an image in their minds without speaking, a vision of the swarm's home field. Thousands of black clouds swirled across a broken landscape, covering everything. The clouds moved like living storms, flashes of metal glinting inside each wave. Beneath them, cities lay in ruined, ships frozen mid-flight, their hulls eaten into skeletons. The sight made Sarah's stomach tighten. The commander's voice was quiet. The only way to stop the swarm is to reach its central coordination node. The humans learned that this node wasn't exactly a brain, but more like a heartbeat, a massive machine buried deep within. The chaos, its rhythm, kept the swarm linked together. Disrupt it, and the swarm would turn on itself, at least for a time. The Thalran fleets couldn't reach it. Every time they approached, their ships were torn apart in seconds, but the humans, unpredictable craft and primitive tech, might just survive long enough to get close. Jack stared at the floor, then muttered under his breath. This is a suicide run. The commander ignored the remark and gave the plan the humans would use their own small, patched-up vessel, now reinforced. With some alien upgrades to sneak into the swarm's territory, they would carry a disruption device built to create chaotic radio and electromagnetic pulses similar to human equipment, but powerful enough to overwhelm the swarm's coordination. The problem was, it had to be planted directly at the node's core. The trip would be dangerous. The swarm could still attack if it identified them as a threat. And once they planted the device, they had minutes. Before the swarm adapted, Sarah's chest felt heavy as she realized what was being asked of them. They weren't just supposed to help. They were supposed to be the weapon. Mark looked at the two Thalran commanders. If we do this and fail, what happens? The first alien didn't hesitate. Then there will be nothing left of my people or my world. The silence in the chamber was thick. Jack finally broke it with a weak laugh. Guess we're really in it now, huh? Sarah didn't laugh. She was staring at the projection of the swarm's world. The vision kept replaying in her head. Black clouds, storms of machines, and under it all the faint sense that they had already crossed a line. The moment they replied to that signal, the commander ended the briefing with a final warning. Once you cross into swarm space, there will be no contact from us. You will be on your own. The humans nodded, but deep inside, none of them felt ready. The ship's lights dimmed as if the vessel itself was preparing for what came next. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly ahead, but somewhere in that darkness waited a storm that could swallow worlds. The human vessel drifted away from the Thalran fleet like a tiny scrap of metal lost in an ocean of stars. The Thalran had reinforced its hull and added strange glowing panels that pulsed faintly, but most of the ship was still the same, patched. Upcraft the three friends had built from old engines and scavenged parts. Mark sat at the controls, gripping the stick too tightly. Sarah monitored the ancient radar screen while Jack checked the wires hanging from the ceiling to make sure nothing was sparking. They were heading into swarm space, and every second brought them closer to the dead world ahead. The stars seemed to dim, as if a shadow was spreading across the void. The first sight of the swarm came without warning, a massive wall of black dust shifted in the distance, but when the light from a nearby star caught it, the dust glittered, thousands, no, millions of tiny, metallic shapes, each moving like an insect. But connected to a greater flow, the wall rippled and twisted as if aware of their presence. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "They're beautiful." Sarah shook her head. "That's not beauty, that's death." Jack's hands didn't stop moving over the wires. "If they notice us, we're done." A sudden wave of metallic clouds swept past their position. The ship shook from the turbulence, but the swarm did not attack. It was, as the Thauran said. The primitive systems gave off no clean signal, no perfect energy pattern for the swarm to lock onto, but as they pushed deeper, the skies grew thicker. The swarm was everywhere, like a storm with no sky to escape to. They saw the wreckage of alien ships drifting in the dark, some broken in half, others completely hollowed out by the machines. A Thauran cruiser floated lifeless ahead, its once glowing hull now covered in black crawling shapes that moved like ants devouring a carcass. Mark turned the ship sharply, avoiding it. The silence inside the cockpit was almost as loud as the hum of their engines after hours of tense flying. They saw it, the swarm's control node. It rose from the surface of the planet like a jagged tower built from shifting layers of machinery. The base was surrounded by swirling clouds of nanobots that never drifted far from it. The top glowed with a strange pulsing light matching the rhythm they had heard in the original distress signal. Sarah's breath caught. "That's it." Mark adjusted their course, keeping the ship low and weaving through debris. Jack started powering up the disruption device. It was a cylinder the size of a backpack covered in alien panels and old human dials. The mix of technology looked wrong, like it shouldn't work at all, but according to the Thauran, it could overload the swarm's coordination. The closer they came to the node, the more the swarm seemed to hesitate. Small clusters of the machines drifted toward the ship, but then backed away as if confused. Still, the danger grew with every kilometer. Suddenly, the radar lit up with movement. A larger swarm mass was converging on their position. The machines had learned something about them. Mark pushed the ship harder, engines groaning. Sarah's eyes darted between the radar and the dark surface rushing past them. The tower loomed larger, its shifting surface reflecting dim light like an endless flow of metal insects. They were almost there when a sharp impact rocked the ship. A section of hull tore open in the cargo bay. Alarms blaring, Jack swore loudly as he fought to keep the chute. "Disruption device secure." Mark didn't slow down. "We don't have time." Sarah called out coordinates and range. They had reached the drop point. The three grabbed the device and forced the IOB cargo hatch open. The cold air of the planet whipped at their faces as they stared at the alien tower just meters away. Swarms of tiny machines swirled around them in chaotic waves, some darting close but pulling back at the last second. Mark locked eyes with Sarah and Jack, ready. They didn't answer, but they moved together, leaping into the chaos. The tower's surface shifted under their feet as they landed. The machine was alive, reacting to their weight. The swarm shrieked in a soundless wave, vibrations running through their bones. The humans scrambled upward, the device clutched tight in Jack's arms. The sky above darkened completely as the swarm closed in. For the first time, the black clouds didn't hold back. They were coming straight for them. The tower shook beneath their feet as the swarm closed in from all directions. A black storm blotted out the sky, the soundless vibration pressing against their skulls like a growing scream. Mark pulled himself up the shifting surface, using whatever grip he could find, while Sarah climbed just ahead of him. Jack followed, weighed down by the disruption device. The tower's moving plates shifted to knock them off balance, forcing them to leap and grab for new holds. Every movement made the swarm above swirl faster, like a dark whirlpool tightening around prey. Sarah shouted over the windless pressure, "We're not going to make it." Mark didn't slow. "Keep moving." The glow of the tower's pulsing heart was close now, a strange rhythmic light bleeding from a narrow gap between its upper plates. Jack's legs burned as he forced himself higher, his breath coming in ragged bursts. He could feel the swarm's smaller fragments brushing against him, sharp like grains of metal in a sandstorm, but they didn't bite into his suit, yet the machine seemed almost uncertain, as if still deciding whether these strange life forms were worth consuming. Mark reached the glowing gap first and wedged himself into position. Pulling Jack forward, Sarah clung to the side, scanning the dark sky. The mass above them was breaking apart into tendrils that reached downward, curling like claws. Jack opened the device's panel. The mix of human switches and alien crystals blinked with uneven light. The plan was simple: place it, lock it, run. He pressed the metal clamps into the tower's surface, and the device latched on with a hiss. Mark helped twist the final lever, and a low hum began to rise inside the machine. It was working. The tower's light flickered, and the swarm's motions grew jagged. No longer the smooth, unified waves they had been. A deep tremor ran through the entire structure. Sarah looked up. The swarm's hesitation was ending. The tendrils above snapped into motion, rushing toward them. Faster than falling debris, Mark shouted, "Go!" Sarah jumped first, sliding down the tower's shifting plates. The swarm's smaller drones chased her, but twitched erratically as the device's pulses grew stronger. Jack and Mark followed, leaping from the last section just as the first wave of machines slammed into the node. The explosion wasn't fire, but a burst of raw electromagnetic chaos. The air turned white with lightless energy, their vision warping as if the world bent around them. Swarms screamed all at once, not with sound, but through a vibration so deep it rattled their bones. The black clouds convulsed, ripping into themselves, drones tearing at one another in mindless frenzy. The tower's surface cracked as if under enormous strain. Each pulse from the device was stronger than the last. Sarah staggered toward the edge of the landing zone, clutching her helmet. She could see the ship ahead, still intact, its ramp open. Mark dragged Jack, who had taken a hard hit against the plates. The sky was collapsing into chaos. Swarms eating swarms, leaving nothing but glittering dust that scattered in all directions. Then the tower began to overload. The glow turned blinding, and streams of molten metal poured from its sides. Mark realized with a sinking feeling what that meant. The device's energy was triggering a chain reaction. The final collapse would wipe out the entire area, including them. He looked toward the ship, calculating the distance against the seconds they had left. There wasn't enough time. Sarah met his eyes and understood without words they had come this far. There was no turning back. They ran anyway, feet pounding over the unstable ground. The tower's lights swelled one last time, and the swarm's frenzy reached a deafening peak. The explosion that followed was like the birth of a star, swallowing everything in a wave of searing light. The light swallowed them whole for a moment. There was no up or down, only a crushing silence, as if the universe itself had stopped breathing. Then sound returned in a rush, a deep roaring wind, and the sharp crack of debris scattering through the air. Mark opened his eyes, expecting nothing but empty white, but instead saw the inside of a ship. The walls glowed with familiar flowing patterns of light, and the air was warm. A tall, silver-eyed figure stood over him. It was the Thauran pilot, who had first spoken to them. "You are alive." The voice rang in his head, calm but edged with something close to relief. Mark pushed himself up to see Sarah sitting against the wall, helmet off, hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Jack was lying nearby, breathing hard but conscious. The pilot explained quickly that they had disobeyed orders to follow the humans in secret, waiting for the moment to pull them out. The timing had been seconds from too late. Outside the view screen, the swarm was gone. The black clouds had collapsed into drifting fragments, no longer moving as one. The glittering dust caught the light of the distant sun like a field of stars. The Thauran homeworld below was scarred, its cities half destroyed, but it was still there, alive. The commander entered the chamber, their silver eyes fixed on the humans. "You have done what none of the great fleets could. Your crude, unstable technology saved an entire civilization." Sarah gave a tired smile. "Guess being messy has its uses." Jack laughed weakly. "Don't let them call it crude again." Mark didn't speak. He was staring at the planet below, thinking about the billions who had been waiting for help, not knowing it would come from 3 strangers on a backwater world. The commander continued, "In our records, Earth is no longer marked as primitive. It is now listed as special contact priority, unknown potential. This designation will spread through the networks of the galaxy." Sarah's smile faded. "What does That means the commander's tone was unreadable. It means that when the galaxy calls again, your world will be the first we seek. The weight of that statement settled over them. None of them felt like heroes, just people who had stumbled into a desperate call and refused to ignore it. Hours later, the Thal Ren's ship returned them to the edge of Earth's orbit. Their patched-up vessel was restored and stocked with supplies no human technology had ever seen. The pilot gave them one last look before the ramp closed. May your chaos always be your strength. Then the alien craft vanished into the darkness, leaving only starlight and the soft hum of Earth's own quiet rotation. Mark, Sarah, and Jack sat in silence. The shed behind the old farmhouse would look the same when they returned, but they knew they could never see the sky the same way again. Somewhere out there among the stars, their names were already being spoken in worlds they had never heard of and in hearts they would never meet. And deep inside each of them, they knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the first time the galaxy had called.